So welcome everyone to the webinar series of the Animal Law section of the State Bar of Michigan. My name is Allie Phillips and I am the 2020-2021 chair of the Animal Law section, as well as founder and CEO of Sheltering Animals and Families Together, which is a nonprofit organization. Before we begin, I would just like to share a little bit about the Animal Law section. We were the first statewide animal law section in the United States, and we were created in 1995. We are comprised of more than 250 animal law professionals. We promote public policy and legislation to advance the protection of animals, and you can actually find our policy statements on our website on the State Bar of Michigan. We offer a newsletter for our attorney and law student members that goes out about 2 to 4 times a year, and has since 1997, thanks to one of the current and founding members, Donald Garlett. We put on educational events, typically one annual event a year, but due to our current world situation, the symposium committee of the Animal Law section has launched this webinar series. So thank you to B. Friedlander, who is a founding section member, Ann Griffin, who is past chair, and Kate Brindle, who is chair-elect, for working with me to make this happen. We also give away 3 awards annually, one to a law student, one to a legislator or attorney, and one to an animal advocate. And any attorney or law student is welcome to join our section. So as we go through today's webinar, please post any questions in the chat. And I would like to introduce our presenters today. So Judge Amy Ronayne Krause has been on the Court of Appeals since December of 2010. Previously, she served as judge on the 54A District Court in Lansing for nearly 8 years. Judge Ronayne Krause began her legal career as a litigation attorney for a private law firm, and then served 8 years as an assistant prosecuting attorney, which is where I know her from. In 1997, she was appointed as an Assistant Attorney General by then Attorney General Frank Kelly, and was the first recipient of the Frank Kelly Award for Excellence in Trial Advocacy. Judge Ronayne Krause worked for the Attorney General's office for 6 years. Before taking the bench, she was elected to serve on the Ingham County Board of Commissioners, during which time she chaired the Law and Courts Committee. She is an adjunct professor at Thomas Cooley Law School and has lectured for the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan. She has also taught for the Michigan Judicial Institute, including teaching other district judges at the New Judges Seminar in 2007 and 2009. Judge Kristen Simmons was appointed to the 54A District Court in Lansing in September 2019 and was named one of Ingham County's top 5 attorneys under 35 in 2017, and also named by the Black Lawyers Association as the 2015 Rising Star Attorney of the Year. Prior to taking the bench, she served as the legal advisor to the Lansing Police Department. She was an assistant city attorney, assistant attorney general, and litigation manager for the Michigan Department of Corrections. She is committed to public service and serves with many organizations, including Links Incorporated, which serves globally to provide service and create positive change, and Grits Glam Guts, a nonprofit dedicated to improving the lives of girls and women in Michigan. Thank you so much for being here, judges. We're going to let you take it away from here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the kind introduction, Allie. I am Amy Ronayne Krause. I am one of the judges on our Court of Appeals. It is truly an honor to be here, to be a part of this section. I am a member of this section, and I think that the work that is done for animals is so very important. Talking about Zoom fatigue, Judge Simmons and I talked a little bit about how we wanted to handle this today, and I'm going to have her start off with a little bit about dealing with Zoom as a district court judge, things that she has to deal with, and then we're going to go from there.
Thank you. Again, I would echo what Judge Krause says. It's a pleasure to be here to share with you all today. And again, I shared with her before you all joined. It's even more exciting for me because, again, we're on this panel together and I occupy the seat that she used to hold before going to the Court of Appeals. So this is monumental for me as well. But ironically, the time that I was appointed to this bench was shortly before the pandemic unrolled. So I literally was on the bench maybe 2-3 months before things shut down, and we had to.
Judge, for some reason, I accidentally muted you. Can you unmute yourself? I'm so sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. It's fine. It happens. It's part of Zoom. So, so again, I don't know where I got muted, but like I said, shortly after the pandemic rolled out, the courts had to shut down, and we had to move to a electronic platform in order to provide the services that we're here to provide. And for a new judge, that in and of itself can be overwhelming, because I'm already learning this new role, and then I get hit with, oh, well, we're going to go electronic. So I am happy to say that I think that 54A District Court is one of the top district courts when it comes to making sure we were out front on technology, to make sure that we didn't have to abridge individuals' rights in order to keep our community safe. And so we've been able to still maintain and hold our preliminary examination docket, which today is Thursdays and Fridays are usually when we hold felony dockets. And so we were one of the few district courts that continue to do that throughout the pandemic. But with doing things virtually, there came a lot of changes. And there's things that we see. I wish that this was a forum that or a platform that we could use to broaden and expand people's knowledge and scope about how they should appear before court in a Zoom setting, because some of the things that I see, and again, the court here, I deal with more day-to-day things. So I'm dealing with litigants who maybe just have a traffic issue, or I'm dealing with people who are being evicted. And then I have people who are represented. So at least they have somebody who could probably advise them, their attorney, about how they should come to court. But I have people that log into Zoom, and they don't know that they should still be conducting themselves the same way they would if they were inside the courtroom. And so there's oftentimes where I have to remind people, you need to turn your music down. This is a court proceeding. Or my pet peeve is if they're driving. If someone Zooms in and they're driving, I immediately will confirm if they're driving and remove them and allow them to call back in, because I don't want you to be unsafe or to make anyone else unsafe while you're trying to operate a motor vehicle and participate in a Zoom proceeding for court. We were just talking about it in the clerk's office previously about, I don't know if any of you all saw the doctor that Zoomed in while in the middle of a surgery. What are you doing? Outside of the fact that, my prior experience as practicing attorney was a legal advisor, I see nothing but liability. A doctor is in the middle of surgery and he's logging into a court proceeding. But just things that people don't think of. Just because we're in a virtual capacity does not mean that we should reduce our level of professionalism. And so I think Judge Krause and I both agree that we really wanted to we want to discuss ways that we think that you can avoid Zoom fatigue, but also highlight and have a discussion about things that we want the attorneys to remember and things that we want them to advise their clients about before coming to court. You can't smoke while you're in the middle of a court proceeding. I get people that are cooking. I've had to ask people to put shirts on. There's people are in the restroom that I've had. I had an attorney recently that was trying to carry on more than one proceeding at the same time, and we're on the record. And I am addressing him, and he says, "Hold on, Judge," and turns the screen off so that he can address another court. These are just things that we really don't want our profession to take fault in. We don't want this to be a platform. We know now that Zoom is going to be a thing of the future, where this is not going back to our normal. This is our new normal. And so there's going to be a lot more court proceedings. For example, our court, we don't foresee ourselves ever having landlord-tenant hearings the way we used to. We think that moving forward with Zoom for the long term is probably in the best interest of the community as a whole. But we don't want the respect and the professionalism of our profession to be downgraded because of that. We want people to still maintain integrity when it comes to going to court for your court proceedings. And so my experience with Zoom, again, as a new judge coming in right before the pandemic, I was one of the unfortunate group of judges that had to have new judges school via Zoom. And that's the first, I mean, we're talking about a full week of 8-hour sessions where you're looking at a screen and you're trying to engage in dialogue and do hypotheticals and, meet new judges, which normally we would be able to do in person if it wasn't a pandemic. And I suffered Zoom fatigue myself. My eyes started twitching about the third day, and it twitched for about 2 weeks, but it was just that constant looking at the screen and try to process information. And there's been so much more research about Zoom and about virtual platforms for communication and how your body and your brain processes that and why it causes the level of fatigue that it does. It's two different signals going off at the same time. So you have your mind, which thinks that you're in sync, that you're in the same location, but your body is not. And so when you're in our profession, whether you're the attorney, whether you're the judge, we're supposed to be able to process contextual clues in people's body language, and we're supposed to, read tones. Well, now we have to exert so much more energy in order to do that because we're doing it from a different capacity. We're doing it from a virtual capacity. And so because of that, it's more taxing on the brain. And so
Right.
I think,
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to add something?
I was just going to add something to that point because I think it's extremely relevant. One thing that I think happens for people when they're on Zoom, they're not thinking about how they're in court. All the things that Judge Simmons just used as examples are excellent. In an appellate court, for those of you, and I know there are several of you that appear in the appellate court, I would never see someone come into the appellate court without a tie on. I mean, I just wouldn't see it, but I do. I see people without ties on, and so besides those issues, besides dealing with the idea that you are in a courtroom and that we should have the same decorum, the same level of civility and so forth. The other part you need to remember, particularly if you're a trial lawyer, if you need to take a break, I mean, I can't tell you how many times when I was a practicing lawyer, I'd have to take a break. I mean, I just needed a break for whatever reason. Well, if you need a break, it doesn't change that you can't ask the judge if we could take a brief recess. Because if you are suffering from fatigue or you just need to, leave the room for a minute, whatever it might be, like Judge Simmons said, there she is with her eye twitching and she's on this call for 8 hours, that's not good. So if you need a break, you need to know that it's the same as it was before. If someone needed a break, I used to actually start court that way and say, if somebody needs a break for some reason, please let me know. We should be doing that now because it is tiring. The other thing that happens for people like me who use their hands all the time when they talk, in life, it looks okay. But on a screen, it looks so like, you're waving your arms around and I'm not. I'm just talking how I talk. I'm not, I don't know why I do that, but I've always talked with my hands. And, you have to watch that kind of thing because that can sort of get a little bit distracting for the judges. So those are just a couple of ideas that I wanted to jump off of what Judge Simmons was saying. So.
No, I appreciate that because again, it's two different perspectives. We have, she's a Court of Appeals judge. And so, like I said, if you're going to go to the Court of Appeals, it's usually an attorney. You would be the one who should know how you're supposed to present yourself before the court. But again, because we're in a different setting, people seem to be so much more relaxed. And not to say that you shouldn't wear your pajamas pants under, with a suit jacket, but you got to be careful because I've heard of some jurisdictions where they still were requiring people to rise when the judge came out onto the Zoom, and somebody had to rise and they had inappropriate pants on. These are things that you need to be prepared for. But again, because we are having a more sedentary lifestyle, because we're always sitting down in front of a computer or a phone screen, you got to also understand that your body is going through different changes. And so, to Judge Krause's point about needing to take a break, you may need to take a break just to get your blood flowing. Turn your, can I have a brief recess? Turn your screen off and maybe do some jumping jacks and get that blood moving back to your brain. When I was doing my new judge training, again, the last 2 days, because after Wednesday, I was literally, I couldn't look at a screen anymore. I literally had to step away from the screen, and I did it. I came into my office every day, because that's another thing I had to do just to make me feel like I'm still having normal work. Get dressed every day and come to work, even though I'm the only one in here. So I have two screens, and so I couldn't look at the screen directly because that close contact with the eyes was causing the extra fatigue. But you got to be in tune with your bodies and understand, what you're going through, because of the fact that you're now attached to an electronic device, which can have, detrimental impact, on you mentally, but it also is going to have a physical impact on us because we're not moving the way we should. Did you want to add anything else there, Judge Krause?
Well, and I think that the important part about that is, I mean, really, whatever it is you need to do to unwind after you've been on a Zoom hearing all day, that's what you need to do. I mean, and I think, I'm not here certainly to tell people how to live their lives, but I am going to say this, that if I've been on case call all day and I've had arguments all day long, I do need to, go get on the treadmill or get on the elliptical and get some exercise, because this is much different than a regular case call. Because regular case call, I'd walk up and down the halls, I'd go say hi to the other judges. But, it's basically me and Skylar in this room, which for those of you who weren't on earlier, Skylar is our last little rescue dog, and she doesn't bark. So she gets to stay in the room. The other judges are banished to the basement with my husband when I'm in court. He's actually in Judge Simmons's court. He's over at Lansing right now, and in a prelim in front of another judge there. So I said, "Oh boy, this could be a mess because they could start barking, and that'll be just another Zoom lesson for everybody." But you do the best you can to be prepared and to go forward, but also realize that. I mean, I think that's why I thought this was such a great idea when Allie posed this idea, was for me, you don't want to think of we're lawyers, right? We don't want to think of ourselves as weak. We're strong. You advocate for folks. But the truth of the matter is, it is more tiring to not be live and in person with people. So you have to, as Judge Simmons was saying, stay in tune with your body. Also, to back up to one other thing that Judge Simmons mentioned, that is, and I do see this with my husband, because my husband has clients and he's had to make sure to tell them same thing. He's going to be, even if he's on Zoom, he's going to be dressed up, and you need to dress as though you're going to court. So gum chewing, I don't know when that started. I know when I was on the district bench, people were, even long before the pandemic, because I haven't been on the district bench in over 10 years, people would be chewing gum. And I never understood that in a courtroom. And I would call people up to the bench and say, I'm not going to embarrass you in front of your client, but, are you chewing gum? Really? I felt like, the mom who had to hand out the Kleenex and say, put it in here. Oh, no, I'm not doing that. So, but anything that you wouldn't do in a courtroom normally, you shouldn't be doing in a courtroom on Zoom. So I think that's the pretty standard rule. My goodness, I just read about the judge in Bay County, Judge Sharon, who I've known forever. And I guess he had somebody to tell him to put clothes on because he didn't have any on. So, you need to make sure that your clients know what to do and how to behave on a Zoom call, that they actually are in a courtroom, and the judges will expect the same kind of decorum as if you were actually physically present in the courthouse. So
agreed. And I think you kind of briefly touched on preparedness, and I wanted to just kind of say some things about that. Still be prepared, just as you would be if you were going inside of the actual courthouse. Like, do not think that because you're in a Zoom setting, you don't need to come with the same level of professionalism or preparedness. It's still required. You still have a job to do. And I know the attorneys that frequently come before my courtroom, like the assigned prosecutor that I have, or the city attorney, or the public defenders. I have two public defenders right now, and one is really great about doing what needs to be done in the middle of a pandemic to make things seamless. So a big difference versus maybe when Judge Krause was here is now, because we're in the pandemic, the judges are doing a lot more on the bench. And we already do a lot on the bench in the district court. But now I'm sitting through pre-trials because I'm moving people from breakout rooms to breakout rooms, or things that normally, if the court were open, my staff would probably facilitate until it was time to engage me into something. So I have one defense counsel that is really good about making sure she's reached out to her clients beforehand and she's had a discussion with them, so that they're not coming to a Zoom proceeding thinking that they need to make a spur of the moment decision about their fate. Do I want to plead? Do I not want to plead? So still being prepared, but maybe because this is a virtual setting, there's things that you could do outside of that courtroom facility. You're not coming into the building where you can meet with your client briefly beforehand. You're coming into a virtual courtroom. So why expect for you to wait to get here, for the judge to have to put you in a private meeting room for you to talk things over with your client? So being prepared and having regular communication and contact with your client is still important. I have another public defender that doesn't do that great with contacting their client beforehand, and I constantly have issues where that person's clients are not appearing. And then after the bench warrant's been issued, then they call and then they say, oh, my clients can come on right now. Now you're tying up the docket, because now I need to go back to a case that was called at 9 o'clock this morning. And it's 2 o'clock and there's 2 o'clock people here. And so you definitely you want to think of judicial economy, and you want to be efficient, and you don't want to tie up everyone's time. So you still want to be prepared, just as you would be, or even more than you would be, if you were going to go into a courtroom setting, the actual building setting.
Right. For example, having your court rules and your rules of evidence with you. I mean, today when my husband had driven to his office and then realized that his court rules and the rules of evidence they were here at the house. So he drove back here and got them and then took them to court with him, because he's had them right by him every time he's been in court here in the house. And I mean, I have everything up. I have actually my home office is now, I have 3 screens. I have 2 desktop screens, and then I have my iPad. So I always say, Ms. Somerville can verify that I do say this every time. I always say, you see me turning to the left, I'm not shopping on Amazon. I'm actually trying to read the briefs or looking at your documents that you filed. I always make sure I have them available to me during oral argument. So one of the things I'm going to say for those, because I do see several people that argue and also who supervise, and I see Mr. Tessner's on as well. So those of you that are going to the Court of Appeals, one of the things I want to make sure it's really helpful, and I'm not going to say it's really helpful for every single judge, because I'm not sure every judge does this the way I do it. But if you're citing to a particular part of your brief, if you can give me the PDF page of the, or, as I said in footnote 5 on page 6, that's always good for me, because I'm pulling that up while you're talking, so I can look at the context again. Because as all of you know, we have sometimes 25 to 30 cases on case call. And I do my best to be as prepared as possible on each and every case. But if you're actually focusing in on a section on your brief or an exhibit to your brief, it's great if there's a hyperlink, because particularly with Zoom, I don't have to, it's easier. I don't have to interrupt you. You can just say, the affidavit from the trial lawyer is attached as exhibit B to my brief. And if I can click on that hyperlink and pull it up, I'll have it and be able to read what, I'll be reading it again with you while you're talking about it. It's very, very, very helpful for me if you give me that cue, because otherwise we end up with people I'm like raising my hand, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but can we go back and tell me what page that was? It makes things a little simpler if you just tell me right up front where you are and what part of your brief or what exhibit you're speaking of. Makes it much simpler for me. So just that's a little tip in terms of Zoom, and it makes your argument go more quickly because then I'm not interrupting you, hopefully. I mean, that's my goal, is to, as much as, and again, those of you who've appeared before me in the Court of Appeals, I actually like to engage in conversations with the lawyers. That's, to me, that's what oral argument's for, so we can converse about the issues and talk about them. With Zoom, I've been a little more careful about not interrupting and letting people get more out if I can, or if I think, oh, they're going down this path on issue one. Issue one, I think we've all agreed on, all the judges. Oh, I really need to hear about issue two. I may focus you to go to issue two. Whereas if we were in live court, with live court, I would say, well, I'm not going to interrupt them. I'm going to just let them go ahead. But we try to make things as efficient as possible. So, and I should have said this earlier, and I'm going to bounce back to Judge Simmons in a second here. But if there are any questions, please do just put them in the chat and we can take a look at them, and we'll make sure to try to answer as best we can.
One thing I wanted to highlight as a way that we can try to avoid Zoom fatigue is we need to realize that as much as possible, as the future can tell us, we know that we're going to be in a virtual setting in courtrooms and in the legal profession from, we don't know how long. So this is probably our new norm. And so we should be prepared to know that in the legal career, we're going to be doing a lot more virtual proceedings. So that means that you're probably going to want to limit the extracurricular virtual, because you don't want to be so taxed by the time you actually go to work because of all the other organizations. And I speak from my own experience because I'm in so many organizations, and I know so many organizations and friends and family think that everything needs a Zoom replacement or a virtual replacement. And they also don't take into consideration that you may need some time. And so everyone's home or everyone's not doing as much as they used to. So they assume you have plenty of time to be a part of more Zoom activities. I think it's a responsibility of each of us as professionals to make sure we're not putting too much on our plates, and being mindful of the fact that just because we're not, traveling to and fro like we used to, and so that means we have extra time, but that doesn't mean we should be filling that time up with being on more virtual platforms. You need to give yourself abilities to rest. And sometimes your best friend and your best bet is to say no. And I just recently, yesterday, my mother-in-law, were in the same organization. She asked me, was I gonna register for the virtual conference? No, I'm not going to do that because as far as virtual is concerned, I'm trying to use my time for professional development and for professional things that are going to further my career. This is what I do. This is what I work. Extracurricular, I have to limit. And so I would advise everyone to be cognizant and conscious of how they're spending their time, so that they don't find themselves depleted. And so now your work suffers.
I think that's such a good point, Judge Simmons. The other thing that happens, I think, for folks, in addition to, I'm absolutely willing to say I am completely that person. I mean, I get asked, oh, well, I chair this task force. Can I do this? Can I do that? And I'm like, oh, sure. Yeah, I'm home. I'm not going anywhere. We're not going on vacations. Yes. And then all of a sudden, I wish I had this button that my judicial assistant got me at one point, because she said I was saying yes to too much. This is years ago now, but you push it and it says no. You hit it again. It goes no. I mean, it says all these different ways to say no. So you do have to really watch that and make sure that you are saying no to things that you can say no to. I mean, I'm really glad all of you are on this call, but this is about furthering, your skills in trying to deal with the way the world is right now. So I think that makes a difference. But I am definitely very, very much one who says yes to too many things. And you have to, particularly those of us who are working from home. I know Judge Simmons is going in to work. I am not. The Hall of Justice is a big place, and I'm just not comfortable with, I just don't go very often. I mean, I go when I have to, and I mask up and do the whole thing, but I am really very, very careful about not, I mean, I'm a 97-year-old mom who had me very late in life, so please don't judge my age. And I have to be really, really careful. So my husband and I are most of the time working from home. We've learned at the end of the day, at the end of our work day, we say out loud, I'm shutting it down. I'm shutting it down, because we were finding that we were never shutting it down. I mean, as riveting as Ms. Somerville's and Mr. Tessner's briefs can be, I would find myself reading them at, continuing to read from, 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. and just never stopping. Not good. And you don't want me to do that, because by 10 o'clock, I'm, not as sharp as I was at 7 a.m. And you want, we have to all think about staying sharp, staying focused. If we don't say we're shutting it down at some point, it's real easy to continue to work. And then your work doesn't, I don't think your work is as good. And things that I'm reading at 8 o'clock at night, I'm probably going to reread at 8 in the morning. So I'm really practicing that. So not saying all this because, oh, I'm so perfect, because no, I'm not. In fact, I violated that rule a number of times, but I'm telling you, it is the way to go. It is the way to go. And I'm seeing that we have some questions. Judge Simmons, the first question I have here is, what can an attorney do during a Zoom hearing to avoid eye fatigue? Are cameras required to be on so that they can look away more frequently?
I require cameras to be on. If there's extenuating circumstances, I've had requests during hearings, like landlord tenant. There was an attorney, I guess he was out of town, so he wasn't properly prepared because he didn't properly calendar. I didn't require him to have his camera on. He's someone who appears before me every week. But if we're, going to be running, a motion hearing or something to that effect, again, part of our jobs is to be able to ascertain and read tone and body language. And it's a little difficult to do that if I can't see you. But one thing that, because I have the same issue with looking at the screen for long extended periods of time. So they have screen protectors or filters, I think that's what they called. Our court administrator, after I had the eye twitching thing, they said they would order me some for my bench, because I'm constantly looking at a screen every day for the greater majority of the day. That's one thing you could do. Most of our cameras, our computers have the built-in cameras, but you might need to go old school and get you a standalone camera that you can separate. So as far as I'm concerned, I think I'm seeing you in front of your computer, but you're really not. And so you don't need to see the screen. It's going to be a separate camera, and you can turn your screen away. So that way you're giving your eye some time to rest, but you're still focused and you can still be seen as you're talking to or addressing the court. That would be my suggestion.
I think that's a very good suggestion. And I do think, again, what we talked about earlier, that if you need a break, you just say you need a break. I mean, it's just like any other time. I mean, normally, of course, if it was a jury, I would have said, as a practicing lawyer, maybe we approach the bench and ask for a break, but we're not doing a jury trial on Zoom at this point. So it's just the judge, and you just say, Your Honor, if it would be all right with you, may I have a few minutes recess? May I have a few minutes off my screen? And you don't really have to say the reason. I mean, you just say, my goodness, I know sometimes people have to go use the restroom. I mean, whatever. I mean, you just ask for a break. If you're really feeling like that, I think you ask for a break. There was another question I was going to get to here. Are Zoom hearings and trials open to the public? The quick answer to that is yes. All of our hearings are actually on, you can watch them live. If you want to watch a Court of Appeals argument live, you just let the clerk's office know and they let you in, because it is a public courtroom. Also, all of our oral arguments are available on YouTube. I never really thought I'd be on a YouTube, but now I am. And so you can never, ever would have thought that. But you can actually watch the oral arguments on YouTube as well. So yeah, it's all open to the public. I don't know, Judge Simmons, what are you doing in the Lansing District Court?
So for the same, we don't give out, unless you're a party, we're not giving you the Zoom because we don't want people showing up and thinking they can insert when they can't. But every judge was required to create a YouTube page. And so that's part of the reason why I come in. It's just easier for me to go through my Polycom in my courtroom, and it links automatically to my YouTube, so that if you need to appear, or if someone just wants to watch a proceeding, they can go to our YouTube page and it'll let you know that we're live once we're live, so that you can watch the proceedings. So yeah, they are live. We do delete them because if YouTube has some weird ownership over cases. So we delete them after a period of time. It's not always the same. So sometimes there may be a situation where we did a sequestration during the hearing, so we may not show it until after the fact. Or there could be a situation where we may not, the court was closed. And so those are times when we will not we won't go live on YouTube at all.
Okay. That and for us, I know that the YouTube stays up for a while. And again, I don't know how long that is. I personally don't want to go back and watch myself. So I'm not doing that. But it is, we do it a little differently. And I do think that's because our someone from our clerk's office or one of the security folks, someone from IT will be online with us. And what they'll do is they'll let people in and out. So only certain people can speak during the argument, but all the other lawyers that are already on, because our 10 o'clock call means, you still could get called at noon, because even if you're on our 10 o'clock call and 11 o'clock call, you might not get called till 2. I mean, you just never know about how long arguments are going to take. But and don't get me started on scheduling, because anyways, I don't run the schedule, believe me. So if I did, it would be different. But so what happens is only the folks that we don't end up in the same problem that you would, Judge Simmons, where someone could just jump up. I mean, I was in Judge Simmons' seat, as she said before, and I mean, in court, sometimes live court, you just have people jump up in the back of the courtroom and start talking during a trial, shouting out things. I'm like, this isn't Judge Judy. You don't just get to, jump up and start screaming about something. So we have a process here, and you have to follow the process. But I get why you wouldn't want to do that. I think with us, because our person who's running, who's in the room, can have so many people outside the room that don't have an ability to speak. And quite frankly, we mostly have lawyers and not pro pers, although we have had some pro pers during Zoom, and we've done fine with them. So it's worked out really well. Anyway, I think it is interesting now that we're all live. I mean, we're actually live on YouTube. It's a little strange, not something we would have imagined. But yes, you are allowed in as I said, in our court. I'm now, if you, let me say this, the weird part about it is, if you do log into our court, we know that you're there, right? Because you're on the participant list, which is, you can click on the top and we know who's there. That would never happen in a regular proceeding. I mean, if people want to come in and watch oral argument, sometimes we have groups of law students, sometimes we just have people that want to watch court. I had a regular court watcher when I was in district court. He just came every day, almost every day, if he knew I had hearings. And, so I knew who he was, but you don't ask, I mean, as a judge, I don't ask people their names. I mean, it's a public courtroom, you're allowed to come in. Anybody can come in. So, so I think that whole idea of privacy and Zoom. I'm actually co-chair of a task force that the Chief Justice put together. And actually one of Judge Simmons' colleagues is on that with me as well, Judge Ward. and we're working on this whole process and trying to get court rules and so forth put together so that we actually all have the same structure across the state. So it's not, it depends on which court you're in and which county you're in. It should be the same for everybody. So that's where we are working on that.
Yeah,
I hope that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think too, because of, you're obviously the Court of Appeals, you probably have a different Zoom license too. So that's why whoever's operating has the ability to make some people unable to chime in. And we don't have that license. Our license, I can't even unmute somebody. It's very basic. They have to unmute themselves. They just upgraded to allow me to remove people from breakout rooms after I put them in there, because that was on my Christmas wish list. Like, I want to be able to bring people back without closing down all of the breakout rooms, because like landlord tenant day, I could have 15 breakout rooms going at the same time. And if I just need one person, I can't shut all the breakout rooms down. So our licenses are really different. And we've had situations where people have thought that they can give their parents the Zoom to watch, and their parents chime in, and it's like, you're not supposed to be on here. So you can just watch it on YouTube. But again, we don't have that same license. And the other thing is, we are at the judges in district court, at least, we're operating our Zooms ourselves. Although Judge Ward and I have discussed, moving forward, we think we need to do some training so that our staff can do more of that operation versus the judge doing the operation of the Zoom. I'm the one that's got to catch the person real quick if they're about to show something they're not supposed to show. Or I've had people who didn't know what they were doing, and they did the share screen when they were trying to start their audio, and that could go dangerously wrong sometimes. And so Thankfully I've not had one of those situations. But again, another way you can get Zoom fatigue, because here I am, the judge, and I'm supposed to be listening to the facts and figuring out what's going on, but I'm also watching Zoom to make sure nothing inappropriate is going on. So
no, I actually think that has to be part of what happens, is that more courts are like our court, because I honestly, between timing, I mean, I'm supposed to time the oral arguments if I'm presiding judge, and for me, I mean, anybody who has been before me knows I'm notoriously bad at that. I mean, because particularly if we get into a good conversation, all of a sudden I'll look down and think, oh, wait a minute, is it 30 minutes yet? And I wanted our court officers to be the one who kept time for us instead of me, but that hasn't happened yet. But I do think you need to work on that. I mean, not just you, but all the courts, because that's an extra set of baggage that you're trying to deal with. I mean, talk about fatigue. That's really hard. We are coming up. I know that Allie, who is extremely kind, but she's very tough on time. Because one of the things is that she's very careful about not wasting anyone's time and not having people be on longer than they have to. We are coming up on about 15 minutes left in the hour. That doesn't mean we have to talk for 15 minutes. And believe me, after all, that Judge Simmons and I usually have to talk. Well, she has to talk way more than I do during a day, I can tell you that. Usually I'm just on the computer reading, researching, writing. But we want to know if you have questions, if there are questions that we haven't answered that you were looking for from this segment. We certainly want to try to answer them for you. So if you do have a question, please throw it up in chat. Otherwise, we're not gonna take you to the last minute just because we feel like talking. Let me see. Check. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions. Judge Simmons, did you have anything you wanted to end with?
I don't. I just want to thank everybody for their hard work. Again, the pandemic threw us some blows that we didn't expect, but I'm originally from the East Coast, and I'm very connected to the people in the legal field there, including judges and attorneys. And we are doing far more than they're doing on the East Coast, at least in Boston, Massachusetts, when it comes to moving dockets during the pandemic. I mean, each member of the State Bar of Michigan deserves a round of applause, if you ask me.
I think that's a beautiful way to end this. I will say that I think that we all are doing the best we can during this time. And if anybody has any additional questions that they think they want to ask us after they think of after we've gotten off the call, you obviously can let Allie know and she'll forward those on to us. And I see one from B. Would you consider developing a checklist for participants? You know, a checklist, I guess, B, do you mean a checklist for how to handle Zoom, or I'm not sure what.
Just how to appear, the kind of things you've told us today.
Well, I certainly, Judge Simmons, I think that you and I can come up with a list.
Things. I would love to share some things. I absolutely would love to do that.
B, they may be something that you laugh at a little bit when we share them, but if you want us to, I know Judge Simmons and I can work together to come up with a list for you.
Well, I was just thinking from your point of view too.
Okay. Oh,
more efficient and everyone.
Because you're so kind, B, that's why.
And I'm retired, so I'm not going to be in front of either of you. So I'm saying it honestly.
Well, that's very kind. I appreciate that. Yeah, actually, you know, I think that's a great idea. Well, Judge Simmons and I will work on that. We'll get it to Allie. So you do have something so that the members have something, because you do have your own, you do have your own website. And I think, Allie, you don't have to, do you have to be a member of the animal law section to get on the website, or can anybody get on the website?
For the animal law section website, I think most of it you have to be a section member, which is why I ended up creating a Vimeo account so that people who were not a section member could still see these videos.
Oh, that's great. That's great. All right. So
I'd like to ask a question. This is Don.
Yes.
This is to both judges. What I meant by a checklist is for you to develop a decorum checklist for participants in your courtroom.
Absolutely.
And maybe that would solve some of these issues, or at least you'd have a level set going in.
I like that. Judge Simmons, sound okay?
I think that is the best idea I've heard all year, because as he was saying, I was like, that's brilliant, because I could just attach it to my notice to appear, which has the Zoom instructions, and that could help. Thank you. I'll definitely.
Yes.
You're welcome.
B and Don are just awesome people, and I'm really, really happy to be a part of this section. And they're just, yeah, that's very thoughtful. It's very, very thoughtful. It's a good idea.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, anybody?
I have a question for Judge Simmons. Judge Simmons, my name is Sheldon Larkey. I'm a magistrate in the 52-4 District Court. Has your court had any jury trials yet?
We have not had any. We've had a lot of discussion about the potential, and then our circuit court held one and did not give back rave reviews. And so we decided we would essentially follow their stride. If they're not going to hold any more, we're not going to hold any. And so we have not held any in the county since they've had that one. We, I think, are supposed to discuss that possibility of moving forward with that next week. The discussion is going to take place next week. We're not going to be moving forward next week about how that looks, because again, this court is also unique because we're in the City Hall building, and the mayor has had the building closed to the public. So we had a struggle internally, you know, just trying to explain to him we're still going to be running exams in person. So that in and of itself was a lot, you know, to overcome. And then they decided that they would allow us to use the City Hall chambers after a lot of negotiation. We need to move forward with our job, and so we need more space. And our courtroom is not built with a lot of space. The jury rooms are very small, and luckily, right before the pandemic, we had the city council president on a jury, and so he got to experience firsthand what it's like to be in that room, and he didn't like it. So all the more reason why if we're going to move forward, we want more space so that we can develop a plan to do that in the most safe and sound way possible.
My next question is, on your landlord-tenant matters, are your magistrates handling the first hearing?
No, we are handling both the first and second hearing. So we would they alternate. So for example, it's every Wednesday, all the judges in this court are on landlord tenant. and half of our day is set for pretrials. And Judge Ward was lovely enough to pre-record a 4-minute video for each of us to play. It goes over their rights and some of the resources available to them during the pandemic. And then we have legal services that are present, as well as DHS representatives. We used to have Holy Cross representatives, but now they're so inundated, they find that they need that time to really process the help to get people, rents paid. So, but we're handling both the pretrial stage, and then we'll set it for a hearing. We're handling both that together. The magistrate has actually been lovely enough to take over all of arraignments during the week. So we're only doing arraignments on the weekends if we're on call, but the magistrate's doing them during the week so we can take care of everything else.
Judge Krause, my question to you is, what don't you like about Zoom?
Well, I don't like the inability to truly interact with the lawyers. As I said, people who've been before me, I actually like to have conversations with the lawyers that are arguing before me. It's not as easy to do that when you have when you have to worry about your interrupting, or oh, actually no, that's not where I was going with this. So for me, I like being in the courtroom and being able to talk to the lawyers. It is actually the only time that I'm in the courtroom is for oral argument, and for me, I think that's a really important part. So many people have said to me, oh, what's the good in oral argument? Everybody's already made up their mind. And quite frankly, that's just not true. I mean, minds get changed. People hear things differently than they read them. So for me, that's the worst part, is that I just don't feel like the flow is there. But I would say this, I think we're doing really well considering the constraints. And to me, we have to, everybody, all of us have to put our safety first, and have to make sure that, we don't, that we get this thing under control. So I'm glad to do it, but I do miss that part. So that's all that I can say, Mr. Larkey. I don't know. That's the only thing. It's just different.
Have you ever thought, because when you're the presiding judge and you say you tend to run over on your timing, have you thought about using either your IT person or your clerk to interrupt and say, Judge, we're at the 30 minutes?
Actually, I have thought about using our court clerk, but right now that with Zoom, it hasn't been a problem. And truly, I mean, for those who have appeared before me, I don't think people actually go over. I mean, most of the time people are very conscious of not repeating their entire brief, because they really do know that we have read their briefs. I mean, there isn't a case that I go in and listen to that I haven't read their brief. So it's not a big problem. It's just that I'm not one to be one who's going to push the red button or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I think it'd be nice if we had the court clerk doing that. But I also think that most of the time, if somebody is running over, it's because we've asked so many questions. I mean, that's normally what's happened. So.
Thank you. Thank you both. Very nice.
I'd just like to comment that I've got cases all over the state, and I don't mind so much doing a Zoom hearing, other than getting up at 5 in the morning in order to be at Wayne County Circuit or something. It actually works pretty well sometimes. Not so sure about doing a full jury trial. I don't think that's possible, but motions and things leading up to it, I have to say I now like Zoom.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, then I hope that we answered everyone's questions. And any again, since we kind of continued on a bit, any last comments, Judge Simmons?
Not for me.
Okay, well, I think I'm good as well. And Allie, did you want to, are you going to wrap everything up then?
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. This was so eye-opening. And I mean, there's some bizarre things that can happen in a courtroom, and to hear that some of it is spilling over into Zoom, of course, that can happen. So thank you for really helping, to, not have Zoom fatigue, because this is the new normal. and we might as well get comfortable with it. So thank you so much for sharing. We really appreciate it. And our next webinar is coming up next month on April 29th. And this is more focused for those who are in animal protection work, but I would think some of the information could actually spill over into, child protection, which is an area I also work in. So we're going to have Hillary Hager and Lindsay Hamrick from Outreach and Engagement with the Humane Society of the United States, and they're going to talk about how to deal with compassion fatigue and have work-life balance. So I think even though they are coming from the animal protection world, their message is going to help so many, because attorneys, work-life balance, do we know what that is? We can learn.
Allie, may I just add one thing, that since you're talking about that?
Yeah.
I was just on a panel, and I don't know if you saw it, Brown versus Brown. It was a divorce case, and it dealt with animal abuse as well. So I do think, I wish I knew the citation off the top of my head, but of course I don't. But I think it is a good case for them to have looked at, so that, because it is, now that we have a published case on point about that, I think that makes a difference.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I will find that. So so I'll make sure you're all going to get a link to this recording. If you want to share it with anybody, feel free to. And I will also add the link to register for this next webinar if this interests you. But we, thank you so much, judges, for being here. This was really amazing. This was such a great topic and timely, unfortunately, but fortunately, this was a very good topic to cover. And for all of us at the Animal Law section, we really thank you for being here. And we're excited to do this webinar series. So we'll see how far we go. This is our second one. And we're just really excited about this. So take care, everybody. Be safe and have a great day.